this moment, this is what's going on, everybody. So Gonzalez and Corey end up in this special area that is protected for a lot of different reasons. We don't need to get into that. You can go and read the paper yourself when David posted. But Corey doesn't expect this, and he is told by Gonzalez at this point, you are going to speak to everybody. And he doesn't know what he's there to talk about. Now, I'm going to let David continue with this, but Corey says in the paper, he says, Gonzalez says, don't worry, just go up. It's the Super Federation and the Guardians. And Corey says, and I'm quoting here, I walked up to the platform and turned to the assembly. Every eye in the assembly hall was on me, and I could feel the anticipation of the beings in the room. I looked over at the Earth delegation. I recognized the person in the seat as one of the members of the Council of 200, of which I've had previous encounters. And he is told...
These are not nice people.
Right. And he is told at this point to say to himself, I am ready. And why does he have to, why does he have to say, I am ready? I thought that this was very interesting.
Well, because this is essentially like a United Nations building for this group of many different extraterrestrial races, at least 60 species we know of, called the Super Federation. And so there's some very cool technology where you can step up on this podium and you will essentially speak as if you're talking normally, but then what comes out of your mouth is this pre-Akkadian, pre-Sumerian strange dialect that the ETs all apparently are able to understand. And it's sort of like a universal translator. You think you're talking regularly, but this speech comes out of your mouth, and then everybody else can understand you because if they either understand the language or it gets translated in a way they understand. So basically, everybody's able to talk and understand exactly what's going on.
So all he needs to say is, I am ready, and
that's right.
the
but
download
what happens
begins.
Next is really cool because this ties back to the Law of One material. So let's just be clear that I was interviewing insiders and learning all this stuff, as I said, since 1993. I picked up this book, the series of books called The Law of One in 1996. And by that point, I'd been doing research for 3 years, and I'd read roughly 300 to 500 books. I've never really counted them all. But the point is I had binged on ancient civilizations, Bigfoot, Stonehenge, ghosts, ETs, UFOs, everything I could find, I read. And there was no internet back then. It was before that. So when I found the Law of One, I found a book from an alleged extraterrestrial intelligence. It was channeled through in 1981. And I'd never really taken channeling that seriously before, except for 𝐒𝐥𝐞𝐚𝐬𝐞, who had clearly been proven correct in a number of books I'd read about Atlantis and things like that. But anyway, when I read this material, I realize, wow, there's literally hundreds of things that I discovered over the course of reading these 300 to 500 books, and it's already in here. And not only are these allegedly original discoveries I made already mentioned in here, but it's much, much, much more advanced than where I had taken it. And so what happened is that later that same year of 1996, I began having direct telepathic interaction with what appears to be the source of the Law of One material, and also with beings that were essentially like the Nordics or these Anshar, these inner Earth beings that Corey's been meeting with. So this was happening to me, but it was all telepathic. It was similar to 𝐒𝐥𝐞𝐚𝐬𝐶's readings in the sense that I was hearing things, and I'd write them down as precisely as I could, try not to interfere, try not to get in the way. And then, eventually, when you get those transcripts and you go back and read them, you find out that it's predicting the future, and it did this in really stunning ways. So I had this personal involvement, never physical, only telepathic, but some very, very amazing things happened, and between 98 and 2005, I had a business where I processed about 500 clients and gave them readings like this. And the success rate was like 99.9%. I had to stop doing it in 2005 to focus on bigger agendas, the greater good. You know, it was very draining to do this work. But I have some really amazing stories from that time. And after 2005, I kind of just got away from it, kind of burned out, didn't really want to talk to these beings anymore. I mean, I knew they were there, and I'd listen to my dreams, but I kind of just veered away from it. When Corey shows up, and we start talking October 2014, I get the whole download from him over the course of about 3 or 4 months. And almost as soon as he'd finished giving me the whole story in the course of many multi-hour phone conversations, all of a sudden he gets brought up to this LOC, this base on the moon, and there materializes a blue humanoid being that looks kind of like it's a bird melded with a human, and this is what we're calling blue avians. And at that same initial meeting materialized this other being that was yellow in color, and its head was kind of triangular shaped. It was very tall and lean, and that's what they've been calling the golden triangle beings. So these beings appeared in the very first time that Corey got brought back in, and it took about a year to understand this, but they did eventually say, "We are the beings that wrote the Law of One." And what's so weird about the Law of One is that it validates all this stuff that the people in the secret space program already know is true. So they knew all along that the Law of One, there's nothing else like it, and that it's very strange. How did this group in Kentucky, which I lived with for 2 years, Carla Rucker, Jim McCarty, how did they do this? How did they tune in to the right frequency and get this? So those beings appear again, and they only will talk to the delegation by using Corey as their messenger. Once again, bringing in this idea of Enoch. Corey is Enoch in this sense. He's filling that title where they will only use him to speak. So they talk in his mind, but he has to say exactly what they tell him to say.
And standing behind him when he's on the podium is Ter Ear and the Golden Triangle being, and they're standing behind him. With the how do I want to say this? The connection for what he is going to say and address the room.
That's right. And what they do is they begin by saying, "We greet you in the love and the light of the one infinite creator," which is exactly how every Law of One session begins. So they're using the same verbiage they did there. And Corey also reported that the blue avian seemed to telepathically interface with him on a deeper level than it had before. And this creates this overwhelming, psychedelic almost euphoria in him, where as he's talking, he's got tears streaming down his face because it's so beautiful. That, I really loved that part.
Yeah, he said he didn't cry. He just had tears.
Yeah. And so then what happens is...
Well, let me jump in. Let me jump in there, because he says something I thought was very telling. He said that he spoke about cosmic legal statements.
That's right.
And I thought that, so he had to get all of that out of the way. He had to address these cosmic legal statements. And then he was directed into speaking about 22 genetic programs.
That's right. So these beings in this super federation, they were feeling they were doing the right thing because they've gone all over the galaxy and they've cherry-picked the best ascension DNA possible, and they've put it into us. The problem in doing that is that we're much more supercharged. We have much greater potential superpowers than almost anybody else in the galaxy. And this is what created the galactic slave trade. This is what makes all these different ET groups want to abduct us and to then sample our genetic material, because if they take our DNA and mix it with their own and then zap themselves with the same energy that our sun is going to give off by no later than 2023, they start to get superpowers a lot more. So they can actually use us as slaves. We're apparently programmed to be very concerned about what other people think and to create idols and worship them. So if they pose themselves as gods, we will be worshipful to them and will follow their orders. And then periodically they take samples from us, and they mix it in with their genetics, and now they're getting this spring-loaded ascension DNA. And even a little bit of what we have supercharges them. So these beings have been doing this. They've been the Super Federation are the beings who have been going around farming all this DNA, putting it into us, running these programs that have taken tens of thousands of years on Earth, monitoring how we do, giving us teachings, showing up in person, acting as gods, teaching us how to read and write, teaching us mathematics, teaching us how to grind grain and make bread, teaching us about astronomy, astrophysics, codified law, sewage and plumbing, how to do buildings, how to raise animals, metallurgy. All this kind of stuff is what they've been doing. And so they posed as gods, and they thought themselves like gods to us. But then these higher-level beings that they call guardians, the beings like the blue avians and the triangle-head beings, they come in and they say, you guys, you didn't do a good job. You screwed up because you've tinkered with people too much. You haven't done your job. You haven't given them enough free will. You stayed hidden too much. You broke the law, and now we're taking the power back. And that's the real amazing part of this whole entire briefing.
He says